Let's welcome Derek Magill.
While I have the podium and you guys have to listen to me, I thought I would just say something about TOS. So when I was in high school, or really I guess 8th grade, my grandma sent me a copy of Atlas Shrugged, and she said it would be the best book I'd ever read. I didn't read that one first, but I read Anthem, and then I started reading Ayn Rand's nonfiction, and that was like, for me, the most just incredible, eye-opening experience of my life. And so here I was kind of coming out of the tail end of 8th grade and trying to figure out, Ayn Rand has laid this really awesome foundation of conceptual foundation and methodology of thinking for me, but I still have a lot of kind of concrete questions, and where can I find those questions? And so I started Googling questions about Ayn Rand's opinion or the objectivist opinion on a particular topic related to foreign policy or related to healthcare policy or all sorts of stuff. And consistently, the thing that came up every single time when I was sort of alone and trying to, on this kind of intellectual journey, was the objective standard. And I would say that TOS has really been one of the most important things in my my intellectual development through high school and college. And so thank you, Craig. Thank you to all the writers and to Sarah. And if you guys aren't subscribers or supporters of TOS, definitely do that, because there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of young people out there who are finding this stuff online and really don't have a whole lot of other sources to look for quality, well-reasoned material, and the objective standard is really the place to do it. So anything that can be done to support them, please do that. Okay, so I was kind of struggling to come up with, I guess, with content for this, because my advice, if you want to build an online presence and you have nothing so far, you haven't done anything, is honestly kind of just to get started. Which I know is not necessarily super helpful, but when you start thinking about, I think the way we go about, typically I think in school, and is we are sort of over-optimizing before we even have something. We're sort of looking for all these strategies and techniques to do something before we've even gotten started. It's kind of like learning how to mountain bike before you've actually even ridden a bike just kind of in your driveway as a kid with training wheels. And so I think it's more important for, if you're looking to get started on this and you want to have some kind of online presence that gets you opportunities, it's much more important to just sort of get started. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today is, instead of stuff that is more about optimization, I'm going to be talking about some sort of beginner strategies for people who, want to get active online and want to start using sort of an online platform for themselves to build their career or to accomplish a particular goal. So my friend Isaac has this really awesome quote. And this is kind of paraphrasing from memory, but he says, basically you can build your own credential today. And that's sort of what your professional online presence is. You can build your own credential. You can build your own signal of marketplace value. And today that comes from things like your GitHub profile. It can come from things even like Amazon book reviews. It can come from your personal website or answers on Quora or Medium posts that you wrote, or your online engagement in a particular forum or a particular Facebook group. It can come from the projects you've taken on or the professional portfolio you've built up. Really, more broadly, it's the digital footprint that you have. It's the paper trail that when someone looks you up, they can kind of see a track record of the things that you've actually done and accomplished and created. And I guess I'll start by giving you guys maybe just like a couple examples from my own life about how an online presence has been helpful for me. So when I was 5, my dad, sort of in a moment of, future thinking, bought DerekMagill.com. So that was 1998. He registered that, and he squatted on it for the next 13 years of my life, and which is pretty cool, because when I turned 18, I had DerekMagill.com. And I'm not sure how many Derek Magills are out there, but I was glad that I had that website for myself, and I thought it was pretty intelligent that he did that. He also squatted on like 3,000 other domains. He's that guy that when you look up a domain to buy, he probably owns it, and is never going to use it. But it actually, for a while, was kind of like a business for him. Anyway, so he bought that for me. And when I was 18, I decided, I want to have a website for myself, and I want to get active online, and I want to start building a digital footprint for myself. And so I started trying to set it up and get it all together, and I realized, like, as I was getting started, like, I was just sort of petrified, because I was looking at these influences online, people that I looked up to, and they had these really great online presences and, you know, all this cool stuff that they were doing, and I was like, wow, I can't do anything near that level. I'm not ready to do that at all. And so I just sort of waited, and I waited, and I waited, and kind of like a year and a half went by, and I thought during the time, like, okay, I'm just gonna sort of, I guess, magically get better, and I'm gonna be able to get to the level of quality that I want. And a year and a half went by, I had nothing to show for it, and I realized I was no better prepared for that level of quality and that level of competence that I saw in kind of the people that I looked up to. So I just started and realized that you know, you're gonna have to kind of go through this messy process of being an amateur, and that's okay. And so over the last couple of years, I've had a lot of fun stuff happen because of my online presence, and maybe these are some extreme examples, but a couple of years ago I was sitting in a McDonald's eating chicken McNuggets in Bosnia. So I was in Sarajevo. Was not dodging sniper fire, if you guys know the Hillary Clinton reference. So basically I was answering questions on Quora and just kind of responding to some stuff, and I answered a question kind of during my meal and was basically mentioned I'm in Bosnia, and I had a kid reach out to me, send me a message, and he said, hey, you're in Bosnia, can you come to Serbia? I'll get you a van. So within a couple hours I was on a van to Serbia, and the next morning I arrived at this kind of like posh international school, high school, and he told me basically there was a teacher there waiting with a wad of Serbian cash, and they handed it to me and said, hey, will you speak? And so I spoke at the class, and that was a really fun opportunity, and it wouldn't have happened if I weren't you know, trying to build some kind of platform for myself online. You know, I think that's kind of an extreme example, but you know, for me it kind of illustrates the kind of opportunities that can come to you, because I was not even looking for that. That wasn't even on my radar. But having sort of a consistent track record of creating stuff online allowed these new people to enter my life that I would have never even considered existed before. So an online presence has been, for me, like the most valuable asset in my career, by far. It's where I get clients, it's where I get job opportunities, it's where I get speaking opportunities, it's where I learn, it's where I make friends, and it's where my online credential sort of exists today in the absence of having a degree. That's really the thing that I use to sort of peacock myself to the market. So the question we're trying to answer today is, how do I get myself out there? How do I become known for something? How do I signal value in the marketplace? And in today's world, I would say, and I said this last talk as well, there really isn't an option about whether you have, you know, some kind of online presence or whether you have some kind of online personal brand. The question is really more about, do you take deliberate control of it and focus it in a way that gets you the kind of results that you want, or do you let you know, whim and chance and random happenstance kind of take control of it for you, and you know, maybe get results that you like and maybe not. I prefer to take control of it, and you know, I wouldn't so much think of what we're talking about as self-promotion, because that word kind of carries a lot of baggage. Have you guys seen those commercials online, the viral commercials of that guy who's in his garage, and he's like, I'm here in my garage and I got all these books and my Lamborghinis, and you know, here's how much money I made by just reading books every single day. It's pretty silly, and that's kind of, I think, what we think of maybe when we think of like self-promotion. So I think of this more of like a self-invention tool, and a way to sort of really create yourself and you know, show the world the best sides of you, and really turn yourself into the kind of person that you want to be. And so a couple caveats, I guess. You don't need to be like a great writer or communicator to do this. You really don't at all. So don't get hung up on really being the best. You know, if you, well, I guess that's really the only caveat, I guess, is don't worry too much about being the best right now. That's going to come in later. So I'll just run through some guiding principles that I think are helpful, and some activities that you can maybe get started on right now, and we'll go from there. So number one, build a platform for yourself. And so a platform is like a personal website. So I think a lot of people, when they're like, I'm going to build an online presence, I'm going to go to social media, and social media is more of like a tool. And I don't consider it a platform, for you at least. It's not one that you own. It's one that somebody else owns, and it means that, you know, if that platform falls out of falls out of favor with the public, you've suddenly maybe lost your audience, or you've suddenly maybe lost a lot of personal investment. A personal website, though, is something that you can take anywhere. It will always be yours. It will never be taken from you, and that's pretty awesome. So, you know, you're not going to get banned like Alex Jones or someone else, which is great. And when someone Googles you, having a website in your name, that will be the first thing that comes up. So, you know, rather than some article about I don't know, something stupid you did in high school showing up on Google, you have an article that you have a link to your personal website. And that's powerful because now, you know, you're directing people to that website, and they can start to actually you know, go on this process of really discovering what you're all about, and you can really focus their attention on the things that you want them to see. And so, yeah, personal website, this has been for me like the most important part of my online presence. I use WordPress, so if you guys want to get started, just build something on WordPress. It's a really easy, simple, free platform. Number 2, become a documentarian of your processes and sort of the products of those processes. So show your work in a really meaningful way. So, you know, when I was getting started, kind of learning marketing, I would just share, you know, the graphics that I created and the social media ads that I ran and the results that they had. And I would even share, like, if I was editing a video, I would share like steps of the editing process. So here's step 1, and I'm doing that, and here's step 2, and I'm doing that. And pretty soon I realized, wow, people are, not only are they liking this, but someone messages me on Facebook and they're like, hey, we want to hire you to do a video because we just happen to see that you can edit video. And sometimes it's really that simple. A lot of these opportunities come to people. People wonder why people get opportunities, and sometimes it's simply as simple as letting other people know what you're all about and what you do. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't do that. You know, I see a lot of kids in college today who are, you know, majoring in a particular subject, and they say, I'm passionate about writing, or I love economics, or I love objectivism. And it's really meaningful to me. And then you ask them, well, if I were to look you up, would I see anything about that at all? And they would say, well, no. And I think that's a problem, because that's going to limit your opportunities really, really dramatically, because it limits you just to the narrow range of people who you might tell in person. So number 2, amateurism is underrated. So everyone wants to be an expert right when they get started, and the fact is you're probably not going to be an expert. That shouldn't limit you from getting started now, though, and actually doing something. And in fact, the thing that I've learned over the last few years is that people like to see sort of story arcs. And if you start out as an amateur and you're sort of unapologetically a beginner, that can be a really powerful asset for you. That's something that as you are sort of developing yourself and developing your career, you can sort of paint a story of what you're doing and how you're growing. And people like to see that. And that almost might be a better path to take than maybe, you know, just waiting and trying to kind of become an expert later. And this relates to kind of a third point, which is learn in public. You know, turn your learning into something valuable for other people as well. I mean, you're already going to be learning it. There's no reason not to help other people learn the same thing. My friend Chuck Grimmett, for example, he has a section on his website called Today I Learned. And basically he just writes these short little, you know, articles kind of documenting what he learned that day. And it might be like a code snippet. He's a CTO at a startup. It might be a code snippet, or it might be you know, something related to cooking, or because he likes to cook, and all sorts of other related stuff. And he basically has this archive of years and years and years of posts that basically says, you know, here's what I learned today. And if I'm like a particular employer and I'm looking at Chuck's website and I see that, that's a powerful signal, because that shows that this is a guy who consistently is consuming content. And you know what's funny is, like, every young person I meet, when they go apply for a job, or they're even older people, that you see their resume and everybody says, I'm a good learner. I can learn quickly. But that means nothing. That shows me nothing. Versus if you see Chuck and you see a consistent history of saying, today I learned. I mean, that's a night and day comparison. So that's one thing you can do, is kind of learn in public. And I promised, well, here's another one actually. So another guy did a 6-month MIT challenge where he was, I guess, wanted to kind of go through the free computer science course at MIT. So he basically documented the entire process, made a video during each course, showed what he was learning, shared his test and his test results and the stuff that he was creating during the course. And now he has this really great asset online that if an employer were looking at that, they can see, hey, here's what he learned, here's what he actually did, and it's demonstrable, it's concrete, I can actually see it, versus just saying, I went through this course. I promised I wouldn't brag about Caitlin today because don't want to give her too much attention, but let it go to her head. But there's a friend of mine in Madison, Kana, who was a model before, and she wanted to become a developer, and she had no developer experience. So she sort of joined this, I think it was Free Code Camp, and started going through this process. But one of the things that the employer told her when she actually got hired was not so much that she had just gone through that course, but because she had documented every step of the way of going through that course. And she had actually said, here's what I learned today, and here's what I learned yesterday, and here's what here's the project that I work on, and here's why I like this particular module of this particular course. So she shared her learning throughout the entire course of her development, and within 6 months, she had a job as a junior developer at a SaaS startup, which is pretty cool because she has no degree, and she was a fashion model just 6 months previously. Another guy, one more guy, his name is Nat Eliason, and he's kind of an acquaintance of mine, and he has a section on his website called Book Notes, and literally he just shares notes of every single book that he reads, and it's become a really cool asset, and he's literally getting thousands of hits on his website every single day from just his book notes alone. And he's talked about before how these book notes, though they don't necessarily signal directly professional competence, when someone wants to work with him, it almost always gets brought up. Someone sees that and they say, wow, this is really interesting that you did that. I love that, or I liked this book as well. So share your learning. Become someone who really documents that learning process, and don't be scared of showing that you are a learner and you're not just the expert. And related to this is sort of teach others what you do in the process. So I was talking to Trenton outside, Trenton, who's here at the conference, and he was telling me about he wants to be like a video game designer. And I meet a lot of young people who want to be video game designers and concept artists and stuff like that. He's got legitimate work. He's incredible. And he was showing me his portfolio and kind of showing me the process by which he goes about world building and describing it and showing me the reasoning process. And I was just thinking to myself the whole time, this is fascinating, and I have no idea where I could learn this from anybody else. Imagine if he were to actually talk about this online and show that online. When a particular employer would see that, they could actually see his reasoning methodology behind everything that he created. So Trenton, if you haven't done that yet, please go do that, because I think it'll be awesome. And when I was in high school, I kind of discovered the Ayn Rand e-store, which is awesome. So I was listening to like John David Lewis and Andrew Lewis and Leonard Peikoff and all sorts of really great lectures, and those things were just absolutely incredible. But it struck me that when I went to college, I was meeting all these professors and other people who kind of wanted to be intellectuals, who actually were not putting any of their material out into the real world. It's like there was nowhere I could find recordings of their lectures. And I thought, what a limitation on your life, really, because just imagine what a bigger reach you could have if you were willing to share that knowledge with the world. And teaching has been one of the best ways for me to, I think, get new opportunities, because you teach something about marketing, you learn more about marketing in the process, but you also demonstrate competence in marketing, and other people want to actually then go about and maybe work with you because they saw that this guy can teach it, he can maybe do it in the real world as well. Next one, this is important. Just make stuff. So, just become someone who creates stuff. Don't be satisfied with just studying something and saying, "Great, I know it." Turn that into something valuable and productive in the real world. Side projects today are kind of like the new resume. So, and the nice thing is, like, the barrier to entry is only really your competence, and nobody really cares about your credentials. So, make things that are interesting to a particular audience, and something that I recommend is maybe checking out something like producthunt.com. And Product Hunt is a really cool place where you can kind of see what other people have made and kind of do your own kind of spin on that. So you can see all sorts of microsites and apps and things that are fairly low barrier to entry and don't require a lot of technical competence, but that you can sort of turn your learning into something that can create value for other people. So an example of something that I did that was sort of inspired by something I saw on Product Hunt was earlier this year I created the Nakamoto Studies Institute, which archives the writings of Bitcoin's creator Satoshi Nakamoto. And I really have no formal credential for doing this, but I thought this could be something that might be valuable. And I want to read these emails and the stuff that he was saying anyway from my own personal knowledge. So every single time that I read a new piece of content from him on an old forum post or something like that, I'm going to tag it and archive it in some kind of way that is very, very useful for other people who want to do the same journey as me. And that has turned into a total side business for me, literally, where people send me money basically to manage it or to thank me for managing it. And it's literally basically like a full-time side business now. And it's something that has created a lot of cool opportunities for me as well. I got to go to Hong Kong kind of because of that and meet some really cool people. And they paid for my flight and all sorts of neat stuff. And this was just a small side project that was related to some learning that I was already doing, something that I already wanted to know. So I think it's the last one. Yeah, well, last one really is don't make everything professional. So you may have some other interests kind of outside traditionally professional things. So it may be that you like ancient Greek, for example, or it may be that you like history, or you have a particular interest in literature. That's great. And people who are successful professionals want to work with people who are interesting and interested in other things outside of work. So if you don't see some immediate tie to the professional world, I think that's okay. Just put it out there anyway, and you'll start to find other people who share those interests, and you'll start to find interlapping opportunities for all of you guys that can be very, very valuable. And sort of just, I think a guiding principle to kind of close this off is, you're going to have to do a lot of this before you start seeing results. It took me like 2 years to really feel like my online presence was where I wanted it to go. And I had to make a whole lot of stuff. I had to write a whole lot of articles. I had to create a whole lot of side projects, a lot of them that are now defunct, just to be able to start to improve myself and to see what people actually want, to see what the market actually wants, and to see what actually is going to get me the kind of opportunities that I want to get. So get started now, because it's going to be a decently long road to get there. But I think this is the only way to do it, is you have to go through the sort of the messy woods of being an amateur before you kind of get to that level where you're really getting the results that you want. And people are going to like that. And the nice thing is that when you really have nobody paying attention to you, it's okay to put out stuff that's not as good as you want, because nobody's looking at it anyways. And that's the truth. I mean, some of my old stuff, man, you don't want to see that, but and that's okay. And I've looked really extensively at YouTubers and podcasters and bloggers and all sorts of other people in different fields and industries. And you can go back through their archives or their old stuff, and you can see that it's not even close to the level of quality that they have now. But can you imagine where they would be today if they hadn't done any of that stuff? They wouldn't be anywhere. So get started now if you want to do it, and hopefully these were some good guiding principles for sort of beginner stuff. And if you guys have specific questions, I'm happy to take them now.
I'm Praxian. So.
There's a lot of Praxians here.
Yeah, a lot here. So I guess one of my questions, like you brought up at the beginning, is it's not all about social media. Have you thought more about integrating your social media with your online presence on things like Quora and that sort of thing?
Well, yeah, it's still, social media is very valuable. It's been tremendously valuable for me. Facebook was formerly very valuable. It was really great, but nowadays it's not as valuable. I just think, I think that's losing popularity. So Twitter is kind of the thing that I use now, and Twitter's where, oh my God, it's tremendously valuable. It's so useful for me. I just don't like to rely on that alone. Twitter without having some kind of platform that you own, I think is a dangerous, kind of precarious situation to put yourself in, just in case they ever lose popularity and stuff like that. As well as, when you Google something, I think it's nicer to have your own personal website that you can actually then really truly focus somebody's eyes on what you actually want them to see. But, all social media is great. It's very useful. But I don't think it's a starting point. I think it's a tool to drive people to the platform that you want.
Cool.
There's been a link to your website on your Twitter.
Oh, it's already there.
Yeah. I was wondering if you, in your experience of seeing people build their public profiles online, if there's any people who do that but end up setting up a reputation or a brand that they have a hard time moving on from. Is that a problem that people sometimes face? I
guess if you say something really stupid online, I don't know. I mean, there can.
Well,
yeah.
I'm actually thinking more like the work that someone does, and they build up a reputation that they only do this one thing.
Oh, God, no. I mean, being known as competent in one thing is never going to limit you in other things. I mean, I can't imagine a scenario where being like, I'm a competent designer is going to prevent you from jumping into another field. I mean, no, I wouldn't worry anything at all about that. I mean, that would be a good situation to be in if you were really well known for something else and you decided that you wanted to switch. I don't think it's a problem, really, in any meaningful sense. It's much, I mean, go get to that level first, you know, and then worry about it. But I've never seen that. I mean, even me, like I'm trying to make, you know, some, I guess, transitions, and I have made some transitions. Like I do a lot more stuff in Bitcoin now than I ever, you know, did in the past. And I guess, you know, I guess I didn't really worry about it, but I can see how, you know, someone might see what I was doing previously and focusing purely on another handful of subjects and just say, oh, well, he's known for that, so he can't jump into this new thing. But I didn't have any issues at all. And I actually found that once I started doing the Bitcoin stuff, a lot of people found my old stuff, and they liked that too, from the Bitcoin space. And so they created this kind of nice crossover that kind of, I think, amplified both areas more than anything else.
Great.
Would you name your website after your name, or would you make it into a brand?
I think it's generally better to start with your name, just because a brand can be more limiting in a certain sense, especially when you're first getting started, because you know you don't really know necessarily how you're going to evolve as a person and a professional. And if you get too narrow with your brand, you know you may get to the point where you want to do other stuff too, but now you're limited. So I prefer it to be my name, honestly. I think it's better to invest in that first, and then if you want to do a brand on top of that somewhere else, then do that kind of as you realize what you want to do.
I see. I have a second question. I forgot it. Hold on.
That's okay.
Oh, so I do have an idea, and I do want to build a website, and I'm working on it. But the idea of it being, like, how do I get traffic to it, and how hard that would be, that kind of paralyzes me in the moment. How do you get through that?
Well, do you have you created any content yet?
No, I haven't finished building the website yet.
Yeah.
That's an idea that like stops me from going forward a lot.
So again, this is kind of like trying to ride the mountain bike before you ride the bike with training wheels, you know? Like if you don't have a website and you don't have content, then worrying about how you're going to get traffic is like the least important thing to do.
So don't think about that for now.
Not at all.
Okay.
I mean, and traffic is a very difficult thing to do. It's not always as scientific as it sounds, you know, and you have to create a lot of content, and then one day you're going to see that there's a couple things that you did that people really liked, and then you can start to kind of do more of that. But that's very contextual. So yeah, don't worry about that at all right now. I mean, not at all. I mean, ways that I get traffic is like through Reddit and Twitter primarily right now. And I find like Reddit communities and stuff like that I'm fairly active in, and that has been very useful. But you know, I wouldn't worry about traffic at all. And you don't really need a whole lot of traffic to get actually some serious results either.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad she brought up the point about a name, because that's a good lead-in for me. Every time you Google my name, you get all the famous people who are not me. So what do you do if you're the least famous person with your name?
Well, maybe your tagline can be the least famous Jack Crawford you'll ever meet. And I think that would be pretty creative. I'm serious. I think that would be great.
I'm sure you are.
That's a hard act to follow. You mentioned Twitter. How do you find it so useful for you, and what do you do? How do you use it? And also, could you rank the other social media sites in order of importance to you?
Yeah. So Twitter has been tremendously valuable, and it's not always valuable, but if you have like a particular community that you like, it can be super valuable. So cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin in particular, is very active on Twitter. So you can just go on and actually search, you know, Bitcoin, who has mentioned it in the last 24, 48 hours, and you can see all the conversations going on, and you can actually, I know what I did was just start inserting myself into the conversations and talking with people, and suddenly I was talking with people who were people that I looked up to, kind of people who were giants in the industry, but they would be willing to have a conversation with me as well. And so I was connecting with all these cool people on Twitter. And that's what I see Twitter as. It's not like a personal connection platform where you can talk to people who, I mean, I see people having conversations with like Elon Musk sometimes on Twitter, and like just nobody's having conversations with him. Like that's a powerful asset if you use it right, because you can really connect with some interesting people. That's how I got started doing it. And then I think, from there people, I guess just followed me because they liked what I was saying. And now I just kind of use it to push content out and to kind of share ideas and share thoughts that I have and stuff like that. And it's just become increasingly valuable. I would say, like I mentioned earlier, it's probably like the #1 source of traffic to my website now for my stuff. So I don't know if you have a particular idea, but if there's a community that you want to reach, do some research on Twitter, see if it's an active community there. And that would be, I think, the first step. In terms of like value, I mean, Twitter is valuable. Beyond that, YouTube, I guess, can be very valuable, even though I don't do a whole lot there. Reddit is tremendously valuable. And Facebook, less and less, but in the past in particular, it was amazing. And it still can be good. I mean, there's a lot of like if you're trying to do like objectivist-related stuff, there's a lot of great objectivist communities on Facebook. And that would be maybe a good place to start.
Very good talk. I hope I didn't exceed my questions quota so far, but
no, you're great.
But I wanted to ask you. You mentioned about like talking about your hobbies and perhaps stuff outside of your work. Would you prefer? Would you think it's preferable to stick to objective topics or choose subjective topics? So, for example, talk about like history and economy, or like I don't know, your trip to Italy and like olive oil, Well, I mean, when you're first getting started, it's kind of nice to do like a mix of everything, I think, because you'll start to see kind of what sticks. But you start to see what you're comfortable with as well. So it's all related to the individual. But I have definitely found value in actually sort of showing some of just stuff that's really more subjective experiences, so travel stuff and whatnot. And that I'll find often, like if I write about a trip that I'm taking or that I'm on currently, someone that is sort of, I guess, following me that I didn't even know will say, hey, I live in this city, let's go get coffee, or let me take you to dinner. And that's been very valuable. And it's just kind of opened a lot of doors. So, I like to kind of do a radical transparency approach to everything. So I just kind of share everything. And that works for me. Some people aren't comfortable doing that. But for me, like, it just seems like a lot of opportunities come my way when I just open myself up to the world as much as possible. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Derek. I think I've learned quite a lot from you in the last couple of days.
Awesome.
I don't want to keep you because I know you probably got a half an hour. You're going to start 3 more businesses in that time. So I don't want to keep the process, slow it down. Just had a question about what you post in terms of content. Do you find yourself posting larger pieces, shorter pieces? Have you done any analysis to see if people spend more time on, say, a more thoughtful, longer piece versus a short piece?
Yeah. Well, so I mentioned Quora, and Quora is like a QA site. I like that because like you're solving real needs very quickly. Someone actually asks a question. So there's a huge like Ayn Rand section and objectivist section on Quora. I know like Jason Crawford, who's here, is pretty active on that and has answered like a ton of really awesome stuff on there. And that would be, those kind of things I think are useful for content because you're talking specifically to one person. So I found that when I think about like that, when I'm writing and I think I'm creating something for like 1 or 2 people that I know, those tend to get more attention than if I don't have a particular person in mind. Beyond that, I mean, longer, shorter, I mean, it just got to be valuable. And it's very difficult to say. I mean, one thing is like how-to content tends to be better than why-to content. So if you can show someone how to do something, it's a little better than trying to convince them why to do something. That's been my personal experience kind of across the board. And then, beyond that, I don't know. I mean, I get a lot of topics these days from Twitter. So I see like what the common discussions are going on, and then I'll write something related to that. And that's been very useful too. But you just kind of got to experiment. I think my most popular post, kind of long-term popular post is like 2,500 words. So it'd be something a little bit longer, definitely.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Derek, I know you have a book either just out or coming out soon, and I don't think you've mentioned it. Can you tell us about it?
Well, so it's called Create Your Career, and yeah, it's a compilation of writing that I've done over the last few years and stuff like that. So it's articles and essays and stuff, as well as a combination of stuff from other people. So that should be out soon. I've frankly been sort of picky with the editing process a little bit, because I wrote a lot of it over the last few years, and the content, I think the content is still great. I wouldn't change anything about that, but when I look at the writing itself, sometimes I think, man, if I just redid it, I could write it better. But you know, redoing it would take months and months and months, and I've already sort of announced it. So I think we're probably going to release it soon, and it's still great stuff, and I'm happy with it. I'm proud of it, and that'll be out, yeah, in the next maybe in the next month or so. I would say it'll be available on Amazon and in paperback and on Kindle. So
Excellent, thank you. And if anyone here would like to review that for TOS, let me know.
thank you. Thanks, Craig.
For websites that allow you to be anonymous, like Reddit or Twitter, do you choose to use your real name?
Yeah, I use my real name, and I just kind of share my opinions without a filter. And I just think that that's better. I mean, there are benefits to being anonymous, but I think there are also downsides to being anonymous, in that you can bring a lot of the world to you by just sort of unapologetically sharing your vision for life, or whatever you want to share. So you know, like with the Ayn Rand stuff, for example, I know there's a lot of hostility people will sometimes face for that. Like I saw someone with this stupid nonsense myth about Ayn Rand and Social Security. Someone was talking about that, and I decided to respond to that, and I literally had like 48 hours of hate messages from people saying, like, look at this, you know, idiot, you know, Ayn Rand is a hypocritical, you know, all these expletives. But, you know, I don't like apologizing for my views or hiding from them, so I think, yeah, I'm not gonna hide, you know, so I like to just, and I don't think we serve the ideas very well by hiding behind a mask, so, yeah. Just, I use my name, and it's been valuable, and I haven't really faced a whole lot of negative consequences. Sure, there's some idiots on Twitter and stuff like that, but beyond that, it's been great.
I can tell that you're a very open person when it comes to social media and the like, and I'm glad he just asked that question, because it kind of opened for me. I was wondering where you like to draw the line with your stuff. I heard you talking about your book and how much you're kind of delving into the editing process with that, and how my dad had to kind of bully you into answering questions about it. Yeah. Do you like to keep that sort of creative process private, and would you recommend it, or where would you recommend sharing that or keeping it to yourself?
No, I just like to share everything. I mean, that's okay. I mean,
that's fair.
I do it kind of for myself too. Honestly, a lot of it's for myself, because I like to be able to look back and see, like, I like to be able to see a track record. It's sort of like an online journal in a certain sense. And like, when I wasn't doing it that much, you know, when I look back and I'm like, God, there was so much that I was doing when I was 19 that I wish I had done, like shared and written about more. Because then I could look back and I could really look at that stuff, and it would be, I could really see like where I was then and where I am now, and really see kind of a story arc. So I prefer to share a whole lot of stuff. It's the only thing, I guess the thing I would draw my line with is like comfort level, but I don't really have that part of my brain. I don't really get uncomfortable with that kind of stuff, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So integrating David's lecture yesterday about financial responsibility of you have your day job and then you have your side gigs. How would you reconcile a day job where you have to look very professional with the side gigs where you might share everything with your real name?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, do you have like a specific example? Would you be willing to share?
Well, I mean, just especially if you're going to talk about objectivism.
I mean, just be professional and be, a little bit professional. You know, you don't need to be going out there and getting into wars where you're, you know, being rude to people online to spread objectivism. You know, and I think that might look bad to a potential employer. But if you're just talking about your beliefs and your ideas, I mean, you know, if a business person is really willing to fire you because you say capitalism matters and business is important, then it's probably not going to be a successful business. So, I mean, and you might even find that there are people you work with who are too scared. And that's my experience. I get more people who tell me, I agree with you, but I just didn't want to say anything. And we suddenly become friends, to people who say, like, you're the devil because you like Ayn Rand. So I wouldn't worry so much about it right now. You will come up against certain things, but you got to learn those things through experience, and then you'll decide what level of, how much you want to push and how much you don't want to push, I guess is kind of the thing. But it's very hard to kind of think of in advance. Again, just ride your bike with training wheels now.
Good answer, thank you.
Oh, actually, my friend Tim just sent me a text. I have my iPod up here, so I got a message, and he probably texted me because he wanted me to tell this story. I don't know. But he said that he hired one of his employees, Mitchell Broderick, because Mitchell shared how he got fired from Taco Bell for talking about basically liberty and pro-liberty. And they fired him from Taco Bell because of it. And Tim saw the news story online and thought that was so awesome that he would bring him on board. So that was kind of a funny story. And now Mitchell is like their top salesperson. I mean, truly, like, just a totally amazing salesperson. Yeah, so that was a funny story. Hey.
Hi. So a lot of us do work full time and then
Yeah.
also have side jobs and don't have a lot of free time, but a lot of the advice that you're giving, it's stuff that requires putting a lot of time into it,
Yeah.
like building your online presence, putting out this content. I was wondering if you have any advice for making the time for that when you're doing so much.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, you know, I mean, I guess you just spread it out over the course of a longer time. I mean, do you have an hour every day?
Yeah, possibly.
You can probably find
Yeah.
an hour every day. I mean, you know, typically you can find, I mean, there's other people who do it too, you know, and then we all have the same 24 hours every single day. I would say if you can do 30 minutes or an hour every day, that's kind of enough. You don't really need to do, you know, a whole lot more necessarily than that. Something that I like to have people do is like 30 days of blogging where you just commit to like creating something every single day. And that's a really good habit to try as well, and something that will really kickstart the creative engine in you and get you started moving forward. Is there like a particular, you know, goal you were working on that you're struggling with now, or?
It's just like in the particular work that I'm in, like
Yeah.
I'm a freelancer.
Yeah.
So I guess sometimes I feel like there's a trade-off, like should I just take as many clients and do as much work as I can and then not have time to build this online presence?
Yeah.
And I just sometimes I have difficulty with that trade-off.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, it depends on, you know, the level of income you want, I guess, and how important your freelancing career is compared to what you want to maybe move into next. You know, when I was doing a lot of freelancing, I guess, you know, for me it was like I'm just going to find as many clients as possible, and then on the side I'll do, you know, whatever I can. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we have more time than we think. Like I can almost guarantee that if you look at kind of how you spend your time, there's probably like some things that you do that you could cut, and you just have to do more, I guess. But an hour every day is definitely, I think, doable.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any? Oh, there we go. Cool.
Somebody has to ask this. Do you get more hate mail over guns or Ayn Rand?
Oh, that's a good one. Ayn Rand, definitely. Yeah, absolutely Ayn Rand. I mean, it's crazy the vitriol online you get for you know, pointing out something like common sense about Ayn Rand. I mean, you can literally, like with the Social Security question, you can show that essay she wrote called A Question on Scholarships, where she talks about basically compensation for previous theft. You can share the text from that, and they just look at that and they say, oh, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. She's a hypocrite. And it's like, well, okay, what am I going to do with that? So more from the Ayn Rand stuff. I think my father has gotten quite a bit of stuff from the gun industry, though, over kind of the years. Certainly has been some interesting phone calls people have and voicemails they've left at his company.
So to the question about freelancing, is there a way to document the work you're doing freelancing, either by permission or somehow masking the company you're working with, so you could still add it to your portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, you can ask the company. I would just ask the company if they're okay with you sharing it.
Okay.
That would be the biggest thing, and usually companies are, especially if you have any kind of audience. The companies will sort of, I think, be glad that you're willing to share it because you might be able to bring them more customers. That's how I try to focus a lot of stuff too. It's like I want to make these kind of things mutually beneficial.
Yeah, so you can position it a benefit for them.
Yeah, I mean, shout their praise, you know,
Yeah.
and during the process, and they're not going to say no to that. Like if you say all these great things about their product and then you happen to say I'm working with them, it's kind of hard. You kind of put them in the place where they got to say yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi.
Hey.
First, I want to thank you because I think you've made a lot of great suggestions I think are really
thanks.
helpful. And I just wanted to give you a suggestion, and that's about the vitriol. What I've been doing, and I found very effective,
Yeah.
is to call them out for having nothing but an insult.
Yeah.
And I'll say to them, oh, that's all you've got is an ad hominem?
Yeah.
And you know, they'll come back and say another one, and then I'll say, great argument. And I start ridiculing them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it might drive them crazy, or they might keep going, and I'll say, well, I don't want to argue with you anymore, but just, you haven't given me anything. And it's at least for the people listening that they're seeing how these people have no leg to stand on.
Yeah, sometimes I like to tell, that's a great suggestion. Sometimes I like to tell people, I won't continue discussion until you learn how to behave. And that's always a fun one. Kind of infantilize them a little bit. So thank you. Yeah, it's a good suggestion.
Thanks.
Another one that I found I get a lot more vitriol too. I think it's like Ayn Rand stuff, and then it's like certain people at like universities, like academics types. So I gave a talk at University of Mississippi, and the professor was speaking after me, and he went up there and just started off his talk saying, don't listen to anything he says because he's trying to sell a book. And I was like, oh my God. So that was a fun time. But yeah, no, that was a great suggestion.
All right, thank you.
This is Tim, by the way, the guy who hired the Taco Bell guy.
That's kind of ironic when you consider how much books cost in university bookstores. But so I'm in my 20s. You're like 14 or whatever. Why are there not more young people at an event like this, or in the movement in general, considering we probably have the most to gain from a lot of these ideas? At this stage of our lives, why do you think there's not more young people into the ideas and philosophy of Ayn Rand?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that young people have learned through school. I mean, you go to public school, it's just terrible. I mean, it's just so bad. I mean, it's an absolute crime that you have to grow up in that kind of stuff. And I think we're going to look back and see it as truly a moral evil, what we're doing to kids today. You know, I think that's part of it. Like, you really equate learning and ideas with boredom. You know, I mean, and you see the classroom as a kind of a negative force in your life, and so it's no wonder why people don't want to do that when they're presented with a new opportunity like this. I think that's one of the biggest things. And for me, the eye-opening thing for me was reading Philosophy Who Needs It by Ayn Rand. There is no other philosopher in history who has written so perfectly about the importance of ideas. I mean, it's nobody. And I remember in my philosophy class, we had this lecture on philosophy, like why philosophy matters, and it was like all these different modern philosophers talking about it, and it was so terrible. I was like, how can you read this? How can anyone read this and get excited about philosophy? You know, but then you read Ayn Rand on that, and I've showed that to hundreds of people, and everybody I think really starts to get it and say, you know what, this stuff is important because it's important for my life. There's a kind of a big push on Stoicism nowadays. You know, you've kind of seen the popularity of that recently, and I don't really like Stoicism for a lot of reasons, but I think the things that they're doing well is they relate it to your life. Stoicism is supposed to serve your life. Objectivism is supposed to be that same way, but if you put that emphasis more on that versus the political stuff, I think, and you talk about here's how it enables you to live a successful life here on Earth, I think that's an important angle to take. And here's more broadly why ideas themselves and values are sort of fundamental to success in life. Someone who does a good job with this is John Allison, his talk on ethics in business and stuff like that, and values in business. I saw that in 8th grade, and I watched that, and I remember thinking this really for the first time kind of tied these fundamental values to some kind of success in the real world in a way that really makes sense. So I think that's probably the most important thing, honestly, is more of that. Does that help?
Just to keep the habit, could you just talk a little bit more about LinkedIn? So you mentioned your, I guess, your Twitter, your personal website. What about LinkedIn? Like, how important is it? How should you maintain it? What kind, like, should you post? What kinds of things should you share?
I've never really used it, frankly, so I guess I don't know a whole lot about it. I know some people get a lot of value out of it. I've just never really used it. I never liked the user experience, and it just kind of frustrated me trying to get on there. So, but I know people who get a lot of value out of it. I guess I wouldn't be the person to answer the best way to use that, though, because I just really have almost no experience with it. All right. Well, thank you, guys. Do you have a question? Okay, we'll go on. We'll keep going. Sorry.
Hey, thanks for speaking. So based on yesterday or whenever you spoke and today, I get this like vibe of like kind of a self-driven kind of autopilot, whatever, get your own generator. I'm wondering, and you just mentioned stoicism that people are kind of using to kind of focus and get their lives in order. What do you make of Jordan Peterson? Do you benefit personally? Have you picked up any useful tips, like on the motivational side or anything like that?
Well, I think like from a lecturer's perspective, like he's just a great lecturer and he's really good at tying his ideas to the audience, and I think that's why he's so appealing. He's kind of, I don't necessarily like all of his ideas. I think he places a little too much of an emphasis on like suffering and pain. And I think he's a little bit contradictory at points, but I don't like to write him off because I think he is in a certain sense an ally. He's a guy in academia who is defending a lot of sort of pro-Western, pro-civilization ideas, and I think that that's important, and that fundamentally like a lot of young people are seeing that and waking up to that stuff and getting more interested in other stuff because of that. So I think he's probably overall doing some important work, even though I don't agree with everything. But I think we can learn, if you want to present like objectivism, for example, you can definitely learn from him how to present ideas in a way that relates to your audience's own personal life. And I think studying him would be a good thing.
You said that you have more time in the day than you think you do, and I agree with that. And we saw Alex yesterday when he answered the question about meditation for purposes of rejuvenation. What do you use in order to accomplish so much in a day, but at the same time kind of relieve yourself from stress or calm your mind down in between tasks so that you don't burn out?
Well, I mean, I guess I feel like I don't always feel like I accomplish a whole lot in the day. I guess I just try to list like a handful of things that I want to get done, and it's just a couple things, and I just do those things consistently. So I feel like I get more done that way. Previously, there was like I would have a lot of days that were like just basically just not productive days because I wasn't focused. So if you just start your day by listing like three concrete deliverables for that day, and everything else is sort of a bonus, I think that's a better way to focus, because most people just aren't even going to do those three things.
Do you have a specific relaxation technique, or that doesn't matter?
I mean, I don't know if a relaxation. I don't meditate. I don't like to sit down a whole lot. If you notice, I was standing like the whole conference. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't really have that. No real techniques. I guess I work out. That's something that's very useful, is working out. The other thing is just sort of unplugging from the screen. It's very easy to kind of fidget on the computer and think you're being productive. There's a great book called The Shallows by Nicholas Carr, and I think there's some compelling research to suggest that the sort of fast movements and really quick access to information and the sort of skimming habits that you develop when you're online actually do sort of change the brain chemistry a little bit and can make it much more difficult to focus on long-term deep work. Another good book related to this is Deep Work by Cal Newport, and both of those books together I think are worth reading and may kind of scare you a little bit into thinking about your online habits. So I like to unplug and do a lot of stuff by hand nowadays, and I've found that is very helpful. It's like writing by hand, for example. I write most things by hand first and then type it.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yeah. All right, well, if you guys want to talk more, I'm happy to talk afterwards. DerekMagill.com is my website, and please subscribe to The Objective Standard, like I said in the beginning.